The Woman King. A highly anticipated movie, for all the wrong reasons, granted, but still highly anticipated. And it certainly does not disappoint in terms of what everyone was expecting from this rather progressive take on African history, shall we say. In fact, calling the movie revisionist history, as so many have done, I think actually understates the point, as reversionist history might be more apt here, as John Boyega, playing King, quote, the slave trade is the ruling principle of my people, Gezo, is actually all for the abolition of slavery, you see. A very novel idea that had nothing to do with a fleet of British ships off his coast blockading the slave trade. Oh, actually, hold on. I'm sorry. Apologies. I made a mistake there. He's not for the abolition of slavery, he's for the stopping of the selling of slavery. He still wants to keep them, obviously. You know, how else is he going to gather up all of the palm oil he's going to sell instead? Not that the movie mentions much of this, but details. Aye. But we are getting ahead of ourselves here. Firstly, we are introduced to Naniska, played by Viola Davis, who certainly does manage to get across that whole man in woman's clothing feel of the Dahomey Amazons. She and her cadre of warrior women are hunting down some mean old men who have apparently had the audacity to launch a slave raid into Dahomey. And Naniska is here to save the slaves. Well, female half of them anyways. The males have already been sold, and our hero shows precious little interest in going to save them. On the less black side of things, but don't tish. The fight scenes are okay, and the acting ain't bad either. Neither is the visual representation of the Kingdom of Dahomey, a pinch idyllic for an African nation, ruled by a despotic monarch that murdered his brother for trying to get out of the slave trade, and now uses his wives as a proto-Gestapo, but, again, details, and you know what? Before we delve into the crushing depths of historical inaccuracies that this movie wears like a bondage fetish suit, one of those specifically that makes you huff your own farts, there are aspects to this that I actually quite like. The Homey, that is, not the fetish suit. It certainly has a degree of African fantasy to it. Everyone is well-fed, the Amazons are a kind and loving sisterhood, full of laughs and smiles, etc. And the people revere rather than fear the Amazons, who are themselves, of course, super nice people, taking the time to go play with a little boy on the way back home from genociding a small village. In our universe, the Amazons' training regime was incredibly brutal, including climbing thorn-covered walls as a regular exercise to harden them against pain, long periods of zero-gear survival in the African jungle, and rituals designed to make them vicious, merciless killers. Dahomey, you see, had a long history of human sacrifice, and in one of these rituals, bound captives would be thrown down into groups of Amazons who were then expected to tear them apart with their bare hands. Now, to John Boyega's credit, King Gezo did put an end to the human sacrifice, at least, which is nice, though their grisly traditions remained. What isn't shown much of nearly at all in the movie is that the Amazons would dismember the bodies of their slain foes, in particularly prizing heads and scrotums as trophies and decorations. The scary reputation also helped the Amazons in another one of their main jobs, as the king's loyal terror troops, used to police the nation, and quite effectively at that, as every Amazon was legally the king's wife. And I leave it up to your imagination what happens to a man who touches one of the king's wives. Let's just say that police brutality doesn't quite cover it. Oh, and did I mention the female genital mutilation? No? Okay, don't worry about it, the movie doesn't either. But, if we take the obvious self-glorification at the expense of history and place it neatly off to one side for the moment, this actually is the kind of movie I would like to see Hollywood make more of. In the sense that it is a positive African story. Glorified, yes, and to a pretty extreme degree as well. But the core, at least, existed. There were warrior women in Dahomey, and King Gezo was a real person as well. It's a lot better than the red-headed female cyborg in World War II from Battlefield, and it does cover a real conflict as well. Sort of, anyways. The war between the Dahomey and Oyo is a real thing, and the rest... artistic liberty. And there is the problem with the Woman King. Too much liberty, particularly in terms of personal points of view. A bit of glorification, you see, here and there, in terms of historical movies and TV shows, is entirely fine and dandy. Take, for example, The Kingdom of Heaven, a great movie with a bunch of great historical touches, and, again, based on real events, but with a tremendous amount of dramatizing tweaks and adjustments. A little bit more villain here, a little bit more hero there. Or Braveheart, another really cool movie that takes ample freedoms with the characters' stories and reasons for fighting, and obviously both have a very Hollywood takes on the battles as well. What The Woman King does wrong in comparison to these other two is that it does not so much tweak or adjust, as it simply transports Viola Davis and John Boyega back to the 1800s Africa. Naniska, or more correctly, Viola Davis, is 100% against the slave trade and has an expressly modern view. And actually, no. She has an expressly American view on it. In one scene that perfectly exemplifies this, she explains to King Gezo, John Boyega, that the white man has brought immorality here. As if just one day, out of the blue, Europeans showed up and went, "Hey, could we purchase some of your black people brethrens? We've got a lot of cotton to pick, you see." And John Boyega, or more correctly his answers, have been like, "Yeah, sure, it's a weird request, but we'll accommodate it." It's retarded. In fact, when the Europeans did show up, they found a fully functional and flourishing slave market already there. All they really had to do was build a pier capable of accommodating larger ships. And that was it. The natives sure as hell weren't difficult to ask to procure more people for the slave trade. In fact, they were goddamn overjoyed at this opportunity to earn riches, guns, horses, alcohol, all of the various goods that Europe could provide. And just to point out the obvious as well, slavery was not only accepted throughout Africa, it was a source of pride. It was normal, completely so. And of course, again, Viola Davis's line is extra rich in the context of being spoken to John Boyega, who famously said to the British, "The slave trade is the ruling principle of my people. It is the source and the glory of their wealth. The mother lulls their child to sleep with notes of triumph for an enemy reduced to slavery." Oh yes, this guy was a radical opponent of the slave trade, as you can quite clearly see here. The lunatic notion that slavery was somehow an invention of the white man is a near uniquely modern-day American idea. Or political talking point, at least, as it is a point of view only possible if you somehow ignore the fact that slavery is probably as old as humanity, white or black. And naturally, Viola continues to hammer home that she is an American actor on vacation in Africa by explaining to the king that it is not enough to refrain from selling Dahomey people, they must stop selling all slaves, because all Africans are one people. Again, no person from Dahomey would ever think this. Hell, almost no person from modern-day Africa would think this. A man from Congo does not consider himself the same as an Egyptian or an Algerian, in the same way that a Frenchman does not consider himself to be English. Only a hyper-ideologically inspired multi-millionaire actress from America could ever look at Africa, a continent like 3 times the size of the United States, and think, oh, they must all be the same people. Blood and soil, brothers. Blood and soil. It is the peak of idiocy. It genuinely is. And this problem just eats through the entire movie. Again, the Amazons are not a warrior class. They don't train hard to be elite warriors. It's a damn daycare center with some light exercise and a spa after work. The only time you see something resembling their real training is in the final challenge, when they have to run through a thorn bush, which, again, that was just regular practice to these people. They also don't look the part. Actually, I will give Viola Davis this. She is one of those who looks the most like an Amazon. And Lashana Lynch, probably butchering that, also shows a fairly convincing performance here. But most of them are just regular dainty-ass chicks with dick all in the ways of muscles. Whereas, as one British explorer described the Amazons, quote, "These women had so well-developed skeleton and muscles that it was possible to determine the sex only by the presence of the breast," end quote. Each and every one of these chicks should be a goddamn bodybuilder. And all of it just makes the core of the movie feels fake. It feels like a movie, like a bunch of actors playing an African dress-up. And the subplots do not help this impression either, as Naniska, the strong and powerful leader of the Amazons, is of course a rape victim. Duh. Obviously. And through a cosmic coinky-dinky-winky, her young prodigy, Naui, just so happens to be the rape baby she gave away. God, it is such a goddamn Hollywood plot. And, just in case you were at danger of thinking that this wasn't just a 2-bit movie, Naui also has herself a goddamn romance subplot, and it is the worst kind as well, where the two look at each other and immediately like, hey. God damn. And her match, a mixed-race Brazilian slave trader who insists he's not a slave trader, he just tagged along with his childhood friend who is. Oh, and by the way, a childhood friend that he allows to be beaten to death by a bunch of slaves he frees because, well, blood is stronger than friendship, brother. Unironically, as tired of an argument as this is, if this was a movie about white people, it would be a very, very fascist movie. As it depicts Africa something closer to the mythical origin lands of Hyperborea than any real history. And it is actually genuinely a bit of a shame, because the core, the more proper core of the story, Naniska, etc., that's actually not terrible. It isn't. Okay, so Dahomey is under threat from Oyo, which is its master nation. Dahomey is a tributary of Oyo, and Oyo has decided to start messing with them for reasons. And Naniska figures this out. The young and energetic king, who had recently killed his brother, just, as you do, wants to free his nation from the Oyo. Cool, okay, this is a nice little core plot point here. So how is he going to do it? Well, he's kind of just going to fight them straight up, which is a little disappointing, yeah. Some more political maneuvering would be nice there. But there's a cool little scene as well where Naniska goes off to deliver 20 Amazons as a bribe to Oyo, but it turns out to be a trap, and she gets into a fight with the guy who rapes her. And I know. I just realized how stupid that sounded. But anyways, he is the leader of the Oyo army, because, this is a movie plot, and we gotta have an easy way for her to be able to kill him without feeling bad about it or anything, Again, setting this aside. And she doesn't simply just kill his ass. In fact, she really struggles with it. In fact, her original attempt is intended to just be a suicide mission, because deep down she still blames herself for getting raped, which, again, this is absolutely a fairly normal psychological phenomenon that happens to a lot of people. She fails to kill him twice. In fact, he kicks her goddamn ass. And only after a lot of struggle, only after a lot of soul searching and a lot of hardship does he actually win. That's not a bad character arc. It's just, God, I wish it wasn't delivered in this movie. And again, the obvious Hollywood nature of it really takes away from what could have been a really cool kind of positive African story. And here's the thing. I would love for there to be more entertainment like this. I recently watched God, when was it made? It's called Shaka Zulu, and it's a British, I think, television miniseries style thing from 1987, I want to say? Something along there. And it does a fantastic job of representing Shaka Zulu. It mixes in the mythical and the mystical with the realistic. For example, there is a point where Shaka Zulu has his hair dyed by the Europeans who are coming to try and screw him out of his lands, basically, using their diplomacy. And he, never having seen hair dye before, is like, what the hell? My hair, which was starting to grey, is black again. I have regained my youth, because that's his way of viewing it. Nobody's going to ask any questions, and the Europeans sure as hell isn't, because now they have the miracle medicine that restores his youth. And obviously, they lie their asses off to him about this as well. This shows Shaka Zulu as what he is, a African warlord from the early 1800s. He's not a man of the modern world. Something like hair dye could very well fool him. However, he is also represented as an incredibly smart and an incredibly, well, how do I put it? Impactful person. Like, he has this natural gravitas. Whoever played him did an amazing job, because whenever he is on screen, he is just there. Big and powerful and dangerous. And you might say, oh, he's getting fooled by hair dye. Obviously, it's not that intelligent. Again, he has no concept of hair dye. It doesn't exist in his world, but he constantly outsmarts the Europeans in discussions about philosophy around monarchy. He asks them a question who are you? You're king. How much power does he have over you? Could he kill you? And the Europeans well, no, not without good cause at least. And Shaka said, aha, so I am more mighty than your king. Because Shaka can kill anyone in his kingdom. No problems. In fact, everyone is in his kingdom lives for him and dies at his pleasure. Which means that he's more powerful than the King of England. And the explorers, well, they don't really have a counter-argument to that. They try to moral fag at him, but then he simply goes, well, is he not a king? You keep saying he rules over you, so why doesn't he have the ability to kill you as he pleases? And they can only, again, moral fag at him, which he just simply dismisses out of hand with a complete shad move. They also present his mythical origin story in a really cool way. For example, how his spear was forged by demons and shit. And the show basically says, these are fantastical tales. I do not know what the truth and what is myth. I will leave it up to you to decide. Perfect. Leave it up to the viewer. Tell them the myth, and then go, alright, cool, you decide what's true. Fine. Perfect. And they also embellish a lot of stuff as well. Like how Shaka Zulu revolutionized African warfare. Because previously, before that, everyone was just throwing sticks at each other. And then Shaka was like, but what if I just stab them in the belly with a spear? It is a great and very positive African story, and we need more of this, if for no other reason than because if we manage to create a proper African mythos, and there is plenty to work with, maybe we'll get to keep our shit. Maybe the little black African mermaid won't be a thing. Maybe a black Achilles of Troy won't be a thing. Like, good God. It would be much, much better if we could simply get more good entertainment, rather than worse entertainment retold and resold through a political lens. Oh, and as a final note, I'm pretty sure you've realized by now, but yes, The Woman King is through and through a modern-day politics movie, to the point that the whole Woman King thing, that is a position they invented, where the king just kind of declares Naniska the Woman King. What are her powers? What is her position? Is she gonna take over after him? No. What is the basis for this? Well, you see, once a woman did rule Dahomey for all of 5 minutes until the king's next heir, who was male, became of age. It's dumb. And again, the movie works against itself. If this had actually been a movie about kick-ass, goddamn awesome, elite warrior women, big, muscly-ass bitches beating the shit out of Oyo, waging like a long-term war against them, yes, that could be cool. But instead, we've got to work in the ridiculous... Yeah, it could even have an anti-slavery message. Show slaves being sad, etc. Show the Europeans being like, get in there, Blackie. Go ahead, that's fine. But don't then also turn around to show the Dahomey with the Indian single tear down the cheek going like, we shouldn't sell our people. Or at the very least, then have the Dahomey next to him go like, that's not our people, those are Oyo. What's wrong with you? We wouldn't sell our own, that's weird. Seriously, at least, hell, even make one of the characters the visionary and then make everyone else argue against them. That would be cool as well, because I do absolutely see a good reason for a bit of a heavy-handed, frankly, romanticization of historical things. For example, I love Gods and Generals, the movie. It heavily romanticizes the South and the North as well. And you know what? That's kinda cool, because it gives everyone something thoroughly positive to look at. But crucially, it also doesn't make Robert E. Lee into a strident abolitionist. That's the point that this movie fails to see. It is not representing characters from the era, and it is not telling the story of Dahomey. It is telling the story of American actors who wished that they could rewrite history at will. Essentially, they want to get isekai'd, and that was the reason they decided to make a movie out of it. It must be nice being multi-millionaire actors, mustn't it? The Woman King. I wouldn't recommend it. Like, the action scenes are okay, the story is boring as hell, the subplots do nothing to add to it, and even though there are some strains of nicety in there, again, Naniska's story is kinda cool, it is just completely drowned by the feel that you're watching a big old cosplay event. Not particularly good. And it is a bit of a shame, because if it could just have dealt with the questions in hand, instead of making up a 2020 solution to them, it might actually not have been that bad. Oh well. Get woke, go broke, as they say. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.